Today on the Relationship Renovation podcast, we're lucky enough to have Kyle and Ariel Tresch of Couplepreneurship. They have a podcast. They're super active on social media. They are helping couples who are entrepreneurs build their businesses.
One of the biggest hurdles that so many couples, whether they're in business together or not, honestly have to go through is misaligned expectations.
Yes. What if we actually looked at our different energetic approaches to life and to business and divided up roles that way?
But also build the loving, connected relationship that they need.
When we are communicating to each other, we do not confuse our ideas with our identity.
I was going to say it's like the true calling happened and then everything lined up.
Exactly.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast. I'm Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin. And one of the important things that we've wanted to do in this last year is move more and more to interviewing couples.
Yeah.
Couples love hearing other couples talk about, what they've been through, the difficulties they've faced, yes. the things that have worked in making their own life better. And today we're really lucky because we have a couple who not only are they really succeeding in their relationship, but also in business, and are specifically, experts in helping other couples who are either in business together or both entrepreneurs. Today, we're interviewing Kyle and Ariel Tresch. They are business strategists for entrepreneurs. They have a podcast, and they also have a really strong social media presence. I was just watching a bunch of your shorts. I mean, you guys have great information in short form and long form. Welcome to Relationship Renovation.
Awesome, EJ. Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate you guys, and we're excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to dive into some topics that maybe, don't get talked about enough.
Yeah.
And really it's the heart behind what we do. We have struggled so much as an entrepreneur couple, and we've learned a lot of lessons. And like we like to say all the time, we took the stairs so that way we can help other couples take the elevator.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We can relate. And I'm thinking, where were you guys 8 years ago when we started our business together? And then, but I will say this is going to be really important because more and more couples are starting to work together, and there's so many logistics and things to navigate that you don't really know how to talk about it or have the skills. So we're super excited to interview you guys today, and thank you again for being on.
Yeah. Well, so let's just start give us a little bit about your story. Both, it would be nice a little bit on the personal level, just about your relationship, how you met, that type of stuff, but then also your journey as a couple who are entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So I will say how we met initially is we both came from pretty humble beginnings. We actually knew each other in middle school, and we dated in middle school for a couple of months.
No way.
I did break his heart.
Yeah, she did.
I did break up with him at the time.
But when you're like a 14-year-old kid and you think that the first girlfriend you have is going to be like you're
forever.
The one, and you treat her like
Yeah.
that. I guess though, joke's on her because later on we did get married, but we did date in middle school. She broke up with me, and we both had some room to grow personally before.
That's hilarious. Where'd you guys grow up?
We grew up in Ohio, so middle of cornfields and woods, and pretty much the middle of nowhere.
Oh, that's sweet.
I'm Indiana right here.
Oh,
Nice.
there we go.
Yeah. All right.
Represent
so you guys
the
get
Midwest. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But we were both in a relationship, when we first got together, we were together, and we were together for actually over 10 years at that point. Both of us had separate businesses when we were getting started in the early days. And Kyle was a digital marketing consultant, and I owned a dog grooming salon. And I later went on to own an organic marketing coaching business. So in the earlier stages, we both had separate businesses. Now, from kind of like the blessing of both of our businesses, we were able to self-fund our dream wedding. We got married, we dated for about 7 years, got married after that. And we got married in the Bahamas. And we moved to sunny South Florida. And at the time, I remember thinking we're both entrepreneurial. We just got married. Things are only going to get better from here. It's just going to be a good time. And that's not exactly what happened at that time.
No.
When we got married, we entered into what we now call the Anti-Honeymoon Stage, which is, a lot of couples go through the honeymoon stage. We had the complete opposite, where at the time we were going through this position of like, how do we actually separate work from, our romantic life? And how do we actually be a couple while we also are entrepreneurial and very driven? How do we leverage our different strengths, and how do we maximize how we work together? How do we talk to each other about what it looks like to grow a business and whose decision is going to trump the other person's decision? And how do we decide where to optimize our time and our money and all the different things that come with running a business as a couple? So we experienced these things, and it felt like there was a lot of tension brewing in our relationship, quite honestly, for the first time.
Yeah. So there's a lot of blessings of couplepreneurship, as I'm sure, you two know, and many other couples listening, but there's also a lot of there's some curses that come with it. And there's actually a lot of complexity that comes when you and your significant other are both entrepreneurial. And we were experiencing like the height of complexity. Yeah. We call it the anti-honeymoon stage because it was the hardest season of our entire life. And we didn't have anyone else to turn to. There were no coaches, there were no communities, there were no podcasts back in the day that were specifically talking to entrepreneur couple dynamics. So we're like, what are we going to do here?
Yeah.
All we knew is that we talked about business from sun up to sundown, and we saw each other as roommates and business partners, but not really romantic partners. And at the time, because it was so complex, I thought that the solution was to just have Ariel come alongside my business and be my assistant. And that made matters even worse. So those that are watching on the video version, you can see Ariel's face here. She did not want to just be my assistant because she has entrepreneurial drives and ambitions as well. Yeah. So I remember just feeling so confused and going into a guest room in our house, just literally sitting on the bed, praying out to God, looking for an answer. Cause I'm like, I know I don't want to get divorced. We committed to each other in marriage. And I know I don't want to give up our calling in business, but like, what else can we do? Yeah. And I remember praying out to God and then getting out of that room and going on social media. And usually social media is not the time to find answers for your deepest, darkest solutions that you're looking for in life. But at this one day it was, because when I got on social media, I saw a video that my wife was doing for her business. And in her live video that she was doing, there were comments under her video from women all over the world who were telling Ariel, thank you for coming live and sharing your gifts with the world. Because Ariel's business, I mean, she was helping stay-at-home moms grow and scale businesses to 6 figures without paid media at all. So I recognized in that moment, wait a second, if I was just going to have Ariel, my entrepreneurial wife, just be my assistant, I would actually be depriving the world from the gifts that I believe God gave her to share with others. So that day changed everything for us, because that was the day where we took a brand new approach to this thing that we now call couplepreneurship. I ran out of the room. I saw Ariel and I said, hey, I am so sorry. Like, clearly we're not doing things the way that we should be doing them. And I'm sorry for trying to make you my assistant. What if we took our individual passions and pointed them towards a unified purpose instead? Yeah. So what was in that moment, Ariel? In that moment, that was like the day that shifted everything, because we're like, okay, there's nobody else that is teaching us this stuff. Let's just create it ourselves. So that sent us down a journey of having to test and try so many different strategies and tactics of how do we work best together? How do we set a plan for the vision and our future together? How do we divvy up strengths? How do we support each other? And ultimately, how do we become each other's biggest fans in life again? And when we started testing and trying new things, we eventually found out what works. And once we figured out what works, our business absolutely, completely skyrocketed. Ariel's business was, at that time she had like a few clients. And once we figured out how to master this couplepreneur dynamic, she went from having a couple clients to just in a matter of months, like having 25 new clients. On my end, as a digital marketing consulting practice, my business went from where it was to 3xing in revenue. And all of this happened within just a few months. And you know what the coolest part about all of this is? All of that happened while we were going on more dates than ever before, while we were feeling more aligned than ever before. And we actually felt like we were each other's biggest fans again, like we were earlier on in our relationship. And that's when it clicked to us like, maybe we figured out something that is really helpful, and maybe other people could benefit from it as well.
I was going to say, it's like the true calling happened and then everything lined up.
Exactly.
And that is exactly, I just can't even, I have goosebumps listening to you guys, because EJ and I, it was like, we were in the anti-honeymoon after getting pregnant with twins on our honeymoon. And it was that shift. I was like, it's either we figure this out or we're going to get divorced. And we had to figure out all the stuff that made it work. And then we developed our counseling center and our relationship renovation program. And then within a year, we were on like a year wait list for couples. Like, so it's like it comes out of suffering, but when you can both be in it because you know you love this person, there's just something missing. So I love that because it feels very similar to what happened for us and how we then were like, we have to help other couples because this is like, we don't learn the skills for this. Okay, so go ahead.
Well, so let's do our best to distill down. And I think we have some specific questions we want to ask you, but let's start with bigger picture stuff. So when you get a couple that are in business together or are both entrepreneurs, what are the biggest challenges that they're facing? What are the things what are their points of pain?
Yeah. So I would say, just to start, one of the biggest issues that we see in the beginning is we kind of see couples that fall into two camps, especially entrepreneurial couples, which is one camp is they have no vision together. They have no vision at all. Like they're just kind of going through the motions every day, and there's really no end goal to what they're actually doing. The other camp that we see is what we now call division, right? Or division. And that root word of die, what does that mean?
It's like a prefix.
Yeah.
The root word die usually refers to two. So something that we learned earlier on in our couplepreneurship journey was that if you have two visions in the household, division equals division.
Yeah.
And we were divided on every single thing that we were doing because if we're not aligned on where we're going, we're also not aligned on the decisions on a day-to-day basis required to get there, which also creates a lot of tension and a lot of constraint in our relationship.
Yeah, exactly. So we see a lot of couples that are just kind of operating in one of those two camps. So one of the first things that we like to do is determine what are we actually aiming for? What's the vision that we're creating together as a couple, as a family, and things like that. And really aligning on those things so they know why they're doing what they're doing and what the purpose of it all is. So that's one of the biggest things we see. Is there anything else that you would add?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest hurdles that so many couples, whether they're in business together or not, honestly have to go through is misaligned expectations.
Yes.
I think the root of most tension, at least from the countless couples that we've had the opportunity to coach and the thousands of entrepreneur couples that we've talked to, my goodness, it all comes down to expectations. Yeah. And usually what I mean by that is if anybody listening is frustrated with something that has to do with their relationship, that usually comes down to an expectation that was either A, unclear, B, unrealistic, or C, unspoken.
Yeah.
It just falls in those categories. So really when we're able to shine a light on our clients' lives and figure out where that tension is, all we have to do is identify what the expectation is that isn't being met within the relationship, and then use those 3 U's that we call. Is it either A, unclear, B, unrealistic, or C, unspoken? And once you can diagnose it with that framework, usually we're able to solve that problem within, a couple of days or so.
Okay.
You guys are like doing couples therapy alongside your, because we have a whole lesson in our couples counseling model that's called the managing expectations. And it's very similar because there's like these unspoken expectations, but once you put it out there, it's like, oh, yeah, that is unrealistic. So I love that you guys are doing that.
I mean, one of the things that I find so interesting about talking to you about this, because obviously because we're in this too, where we're married, we love each other, we have a blended family. We also have this business that has employees and different facets to it, is how things like misaligned expectations, division in how you go about doing things or wanting things, whatever, and how it affects both. It affects both your relationship and your business. So, I mean, what do you see there in that interplay, or what you see, how does it affect their relationship and how does it affect their business?
Yeah. This is such a great question, and it's so timely because we actually, right after this podcast, we have back-to-back strategy calls with the clients that we work with that we are currently helping grow their businesses to 7 figures and beyond. And what's very interesting with these clients is that they have, on one hand, some relationship tension, and on the other hand, a business constraint. yet both of them are 100% tied.
Yes.
And this is what I believe was missing in the coaching space years ago, and why Ariel and I do what we do. Because I'll give a perfect example, and I won't use their names, but I'm sure many couples can relate to this too.
Yeah.
This couple that we're coaching, they specifically have been working 12 to 16 hour days every single day, and their relationship is suffering as a result. Simultaneously, they want to grow their business, but they know that their relationship is suffering. So what happens is, on the business side of things, we're not going to expand and grow and scale our business beyond the point of pain that we project forward in the future. So unless we can free up more time strategically for this couple to spend more time together and reconnecting as a couple, the business is not going to grow. Simultaneously, they want to prioritize the relationship more, but how is it possible for you to prioritize your relationship if you're working 12 to 16 hours per day?
And have kids and all the other responsibilities in life.
Exactly. So now we're holding two tensions where we want to grow our business and we want our relationship to thrive. When both of them are not working well, they're completely tied.
Yeah.
And a phrase that we live by, and that I'm sure you guys and everybody listening knows as well, is we don't usually have business problems. We have personal problems that show up in the business.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side of that, if we could take the time to install the right systems and processes in the lives of a couple, all of a sudden they're able to prioritize each other. They're able to have more romance time in addition to the work time.
Yeah.
They're able to enjoy the full benefits of actually being in business with their spouse. And it becomes something that's pleasurable, not something that's painful.
Yeah.
And once you can make it pleasurable to grow a business, and even subconsciously, the more I grow in my business, the more I can actually spend time with my spouse.
Yeah.
That's the magic trick that unlocks so much more growth.
Yep.
So that's an example of how those things are so holistically tied together.
Can I share something personal, because I relate to that so well? And yes, we might be hiring you after this interview is over, but so EJ and I have been in business now for eight years together. And we worked 60, 70 hours a week. And now we have a staff of 15. And we keep saying, okay, this is the year. Okay, just one more year of grinding. And this year I really feel it. But it's like there's mornings where I'll come into the podcast and I'm just in tears because I'm so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because we haven't been able to, our hearts are in the right place. We have not been able to balance. And our story, our narrative is we just got to grind another year and then something big will happen. Just one more. And I remember saying this 4 years ago when we're getting home at 9 o'clock at night and I have no energy for my kids because I'm so exhausted from everybody's suffering that day. And it's so true. And it's just this story that we get into, and kind of hearing you talk, it's it just makes me feel hopeful that there's a different way to do it.
100%.
Because we're just trapped in this, this is what people do. You just bust your butt for years and then it'll just be. But that's not true anymore. I'm starting to really believe that's not true.
Yeah. I would just say that, first of all, you're definitely not alone.
Yeah.
There are so many entrepreneur couples who've walked through that same exact journey. Yep. And what's interesting about entrepreneurship in general is I bet a lot of the things you guys are doing are actually good things that have got you to this point. Yep. But eventually you hit a certain season where the things that got you here aren't going to take you to the next step. And so a phrase that we like to say is what got you out of Egypt isn't going to take you to the promised land. So, if you ever find yourself in a position where you are working nonstop and you feel overwhelmed and you're telling yourself, I just need to keep grinding in order to get to the next level. That's kind of similar to, if you wanted to get through a wall, you can keep punching through the wall. And if you keep punching through the wall, you'll probably eventually punch a hole through it big enough for you to walk through. What we essentially do is we say, hey, instead of continuing to punch through the wall, why don't we just take a step aside and walk through the door?
Yep.
So there are absolutely opportunities outside of the perspective where, yes, it based on your level of business, based on where you are in your stage of growth, there's just different doors you can open up that give you so much more leverage in your activity.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's the gift of a therapist or coaches like yourselves, is somebody who sort of assists you in the process of stopping,
yes,
taking a step back and trying to gain some perspective and seeing things in a bigger picture, because like Tarah said, and this isn't just entrepreneurs, this is like anybody in modern Western society, is like we live in a place of perpetual motion and just perpetual survival. And that's not good for a relationship. It's not good for an individual's central nervous system. Mm-hmm. That's another big thing that we talk about with couples, is like finding a way to just like take a step back, take a couple breaths, get into your window of tolerance. You and your partner like be able to see things clearly. And it sounds like that's very similar to what you guys are doing.
100%. One of my favorite phrases is, you can't see the label when you're inside the bottle. Yep. And we're all guilty of this. That's why Ariel and myself have had mentors since we were in our early 20s. Like for context for everybody listening, I was a college dropout. I toured the country in a rock band as a drummer because that was my only marketable skill. The only way that I've been able to be where I am today, having grown and scaled multiple companies. I was a fractional CMO for 3 different companies by the time I was 30 years old. And we've grown companies by over $77 million online. The only way I was able to do that is by having coaches that could point out things that I didn't know. Yep. And when I say you can't read the label when you're inside the bottle, what I mean is like all of us are in the day to day. We only see what we see, and we get kind of trapped into all of the different tasks that we have to do that day. We don't see the opportunities around the bend. But when you have a coach, or to your point, a therapist, a counselor, somebody that you can meet with that can look at your life, your relationship, or your business from a third party perspective, they can see things that we can't. And that's why I think everyone should have a coach, a mentor, or a counselor in their life. I just think it's required.
In any area of life that you're looking to grow in.
100%.
I think too, that's especially if like you're starting off a business and like, let's just say you have like low funds, like EJ and I were trying to do things that are not in our wheelhouse. Like I'm an amazing therapist. Yeah. I suck at trying to create content. It overwhelmed me. I would like, okay, how do I do social media? I mean, I was just like I was trying, and then the business side of things, like, no, like therapists are not good business people, but we kept trying to learn until you finally realize like, this is not, we've got to help. We need help. We need a coach in that way. Like we're really good at helping couples prioritize their relationship.
Absolutely.
And hold suffering and, process what they need to process so they can stay together and not take the easy way out by instant gratification. I'm just going to leave. But there is something to be said around like kind of accepting that there might be areas that you can't see for yourself that other people can, and letting go. But I think when it's like your business, you think like you can do it all, and it's not true.
So I got a question around that. So again, continuing with this idea of like the, sort of the dichotomy of the relationship and then the business, like, and something we, in our pre-talk before we began, we talked a little bit about roles, about that's another problem that the couples have, where defining roles within the business. But what's the interplay between defining roles within the business and defining roles sort of within the relationship or the, the family / sort of the business of having a coupleship?
Yeah. So I know when Kyle and I were first, entrepreneurs and we had separate businesses, one of the biggest issues we ran into between personal and business was, in business, whose time was quote unquote less valuable to go do the more menial tasks at home, like dishes and laundry and meal prep and all of those other things. Like we viewed one as like a higher priority and higher value, and one as a lower value. And we had this like kind of power struggle between who was going to do what. And so what we later found is one of the things that was the most helpful for us in business, and it also translates into the household specifically, was a lot of people divide roles either just by like what they've always done, or other traditional advice is by strengths and weaknesses, right? Do what you're good at. I'll do what you're not good at, and vice versa. And what we found is Kyle and I have a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. And we see that with other couples. They're oftentimes very different, but they do have some overlap similarities as well. So in business, what do you do when both of you are good at marketing? Kyle and I both had backgrounds in marketing. And so we were like, what do we do when we're both good at marketing? what do we do when we're both not good at things like finances and like accounting and all the other things that we're not good at? When we have those overlapped strengths and weaknesses, what do we actually do? And so I remember one of the things that was the most interesting for us is Kyle traveled one time without me, and I stayed home and kind of manned the business and manned the home. And when he came back, no offense.
No offense.
I told him, I'm like, I got so much done when you were gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no offense to you. But I think it was because I wasn't being forced to operate in a way that was outside of my natural like energy style, meaning the things that gave me energy. I was able to operate in a way and do things in a way that I wanted to do them in the way that worked best for me and was the most efficient for me. Mm-hmm. And so when we made that realization over some breadsticks at Olive Garden, it was a great time. When we made that realization, what happened is we were like, instead of dividing up roles by just strengths and weaknesses or just how we've always done things, what if we actually looked at our different energetic approaches to life and to business and divided up roles that way? So that looked like, okay, if there were certain tasks that gave me energy, I would take those tasks. If there were certain tasks that gave Kyle energy, he would take those tasks. If there were certain things that maybe I was better at, I may still take those, but I would also look at, we'd also divided by length of time, because we found that Kyle's very good at doing quick hit sort of tasks, things that can, be done in like 5 minutes. I was very good at long-term projects where I could look at something and see what needed to be done and work on it for months or weeks at a time. And so just those different energetic approaches was what we took into account when we were able to divide up roles. So we did that not only in the business in terms of how we work together, but also in the household. The little quick hit tasks Kyle will often take. The longer term projects I man. So that was a way that we divided up roles that was very, very different than what many people told us to do.
That's right. And then also too, a quick tip for anybody that's listening, if you want a really, really quick, fast hack of getting more time throughout the day so you can make more money, it's when you actually list out all the household items and you delegate those things first to a house cleaner, a house manager. For Ariel and I, that was a game changer. We're very blessed now where we haven't, done laundry or dishes ourselves for many years. And it's because a lot of those responsibilities would fall on Ariel, but her business was cranking. And I remember one time she wanted to hire out some areas of her business. And I'm like, well, why would you want to hire out areas of your business when just to free up more time to do the dishes? What if you could pay somebody $15 an hour so you could free up time for you to make $120 an hour, and then you could just, continue working on the things that make you money. And we made that one shift and have never looked back. So there's
EJ,
ways.
Are you listening to this?
I saw you're like, Tara's like squirming over there. She's like, the laundry.
Shoot, you're not trying to cause conflict between you.
People are throwing elbows.
Well, I mean, one thing I'm just hearing, because when you were talking about dividing up tasks and looking at strengths and energy output and what I just thought of as just like intentionality is like, again, so many of the decisions we've made over the years, both as a family, as in our household, but also in our business, are made just like instinctively, just like get it done. How do we get it done? How do we get it done? And not thoughtfully, and not like what actually like what brings, energy into my bucket instead of taking energy out of my bucket. What can be outsourced much more easily, that just, you're really talking about helping people make very intentional decisions that must lead to more quality interactions between them and more quality time between them. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest struggles for us is that like we have spent for years hours and hours and hours of together, but they're not like intentional quality time together. And so it's sort of like, it's paradoxical,
I feel like the work you both do with couples allows the individual to be in their natural state that feels organic for them. So then there's not resentment building. Like, why do I have to keep doing this thing that feels so bad? And so when you get to be who you want to be and who you feel like it's, that organic person, that feels really good. And now you get to be with your person who's also feeling the same way versus grinding. Like I have this motto, which is so bad. And it happened the other day because I'm just like, okay, grind. I got to grind today. Grinding is grounding. Grinding is grounding. No more. That is shoo-shoo.
Yeah.
That is going out of my brain. But it feels really good that you guys are trying to really help people be their authentic selves individually and then bring that together, which feels very whole, I guess. And that's
Absolutely.
like our work with our couples. We try to bring it all together so they can feel like S1.
All right, so I got another. So I was just looking through your shorts in the last couple of days just to give me some little punch points. So
Yeah.
I have a couple. So and this one is a definite struggle in relationship, and we've certainly faced it over the years. Is you need to be a critical thinker, both in life, but certainly in business.
Yeah.
But how do you avoid being critical with each other or feeling that when you're giving feedback, it's criticism? I know that's something that Tarah has sometimes felt, that I'm criticizing her. Oh, and I definitely feel that way too. I get super defensive, so
Yeah.
I'll own that.
Yeah. So like you said, in business, not only do you have to think critically, but oftentimes when you're two very strong individuals, you have strong opinions, strong, personalities sometimes.
Mhm.
Those things can clash, especially in business. And, again, it carries over into the household, as we've said. So one of the things that has been the most helpful for us is really determining, how do we have a conversation? How do we disagree? How do we critically think together, but in a way that doesn't clash with each other?
Yeah, there's a couple kind of key rules that we've established just in the ways that we communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because when we shared this earlier this year with an entire group of entrepreneur couples, they took these rules and they actually, like, some of our clients will print them out and they'll put them on their mirror just to remind themselves that when they're communicating as a team, not as two opponents that are attacking each other's ideas.
Yes.
So some of the base ground rules that we have is, when we are communicating to each other, we do not confuse our ideas with our identity.
Yeah.
That's one core key rule. And what that means is, if I have an idea to like launch a mastermind, for example, and Ariel does not like that idea, or she just thinks it's the right idea at the wrong time, which is usually the case. What I've learned to do over the years is separate her feedback from who I am as a person.
Yeah.
So for me, I used to get really like criticized or upset. I'd be like, what the heck? Like, you don't think this is a good idea? Like, don't you know who I am? Like, I this is a great idea. Come on. And then I had to separate. So maybe striking a chord, right? So so what I've had to do is say, okay, there's a difference between an idea and my identity. My idea is a mastermind, but whether or not this is the right idea right now does not mean that I am any more stupid, or I am my ideas aren't worthwhile, or that I don't bring value to the discussion. It just means that there's a separation there. That's just one example. Do you have any other examples?
I would also just say one of the like key mantras we come back to is, it's not who's right, it's what's right.
Right.
And how can we look at, we're both on the same team, we both ultimately want the same goal. So if we can keep the goal in mind and know that we're coming together as a unified front to achieve that goal, then it helps diffuse a lot of the defensiveness that we might be experiencing in that moment.
Yeah. And then one last thing too, that's helpful for any relationship, whether you're in business or not, which is that we never attack each other's character.
Yeah.
So on one hand, my ideas are not my identity, but on the other hand, I am not going to tell Ariel that she is wrong or stupid or any sort of label for bringing an idea to me that I also disagree with. Like, if we could separate the fact that your idea, I might not agree with your idea, but I love you still as a person. That differentiation is, my gosh, just doing that one thing that could save so many fights. It's not even funny.
Oh yeah. There's like a hard rule in our counseling center is no character assassination in session. And if that continues, we're going to have to ask you to leave. We're sorry. You're here to create emotional safety. One thing I have to ask you both, because this kind of was a dynamic that happened. Like, let's just say a couple they have their business and then they hire staff on. And then, like, I know for us, there were times where I felt like EJ was like, I kind of lost my role as owner, creator, developer, and that other staff now, like, he was joining with them and I was losing my whole identity as like everything that I put together. And I remember it caused friction. I was like, how is it that it's two of us? Like, I love other people's ideas. I love our team. But like, how have you guys come across that?
I want to make sure I understand specifically. So what was it about that situation that caused you to feel like you lost a part of who you were?
So we have someone on our team, and she's got a very strong personality and strong ideas about our business. And I felt like her and EJ had more time to talk because I was doing other things. And so I felt like there was this like triangulation piece happening, and that I didn't have a voice anymore because her personality, love her, took over, or her vision was almost bigger than mine. And I was like, well, that's not even my vision, but I would allow it to happen. And it felt so bad. And again, I think it was a learning experience for us, but like, how do you kind of bulletproof that relationship with the person you started the business with versus like other strong personalities that start to come in and say, this is what you guys need to do. And it might feel really good to EJ, but it feels not good to me intuitively. I would say that's kind of a big struggle for us still at times.
Well, yeah. I mean, before you guys jumping in, and again, that there's that parallel of, because we talk about this with couples, is like when there's a third, when the child becomes, there's an alignment, or there's a friend, or that any time there's a sort of like what either partner perceives as a threat to a unified front, that is seriously problematic.
Yeah, it is so true too. I'll give my perspective, and then I would love to hear yours as well. So my perspective is, specifically around the question of how do you bulletproof that? I think that just your vulnerability of offering that up to EJ, even as we're doing this interview right now, I think that is honestly the first step. And just maintaining that open communication. I think you both are probably great at that. So I think that you're doing that amazing first step. And that is something that we encourage all of our couples in our programs to do, is to have open, candid, honest, vulnerable conversations to make sure that both of you know where each other stands. So for Ariel and I, we no matter how many team members we hire, no matter who comes into our life, we know that ultimately we sit at the top, and we not as in like we're better than everybody, but more we sit at the top in terms like, if we don't agree together on a decision, we don't move forward. But if we do agree on the decision, it doesn't matter if our team members agree or disagree, we are in charge. So I will say that I have experienced this with many of our clients before, because ultimately when you are a leader of a company, and you have a team, and you also really, really care about people, you feel like you want to acquiesce to their requests, meaning your team members' requests, and you feel like your voice might not be heard. But the actual reality is that as CEOs of your company, or even co-CEOs, as most couplepreneurs are, you have to make decisions as a couple and make sure that that is supreme and prioritized above everybody else's input. And some of the best CEOs that we've worked with, who have grown tens of millions of dollars worth of business in the last couple of years, who have continuously scaled, a lot of times they have to make decisions that the team does not like. But if they're aligned at the top, that is the rule and that is the law. So I don't know if that's necessarily like the most fun answer, but that's the real answer that we've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's just staying united, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The other part that I would add to that is maybe a little more on a leadership front, is just in general that you set the culture for your team. You set the expectations, the responsibilities. And of course, you want a culture where your team members feel empowered to share their opinions, to share their ideas, because that's going to ultimately create a stronger business when you have not only the two of you, but also other people who are maybe better in some arenas that can contribute their ideas. But you also want to consider like your team members are an extension of you and an extension of your culture. So instead of viewing them as a threat, it's like, how can we communicate the vision that we have to them? And then how can they expand that vision to maybe the people that are underneath them as well, versus it becoming a competition between you?
100%. We actually had a client deal with exactly this situation. She owns a med spa, and she hired in a salesperson who was very opinionated and had a ton of different ideas, and it felt threatening to her. And we had to work through some mental and practical shifts to remind her, no, you're still the leader. Just so you know, you still run the company. It's not, she doesn't run it over you. And then number two, you could actually communicate your expectations of what that person's role is. So that way, if you feel like they're encroaching into other lanes that you feel like they're not supposed to, all it takes is one conversation and aligning on the expectations for that team member.
Yep.
Well, and I think it's like, it's an essential part of a business is other people have to take leadership roles.
Yeah.
But I think it maybe is more complicated when it's two people. Because we each have like different reactions and different visions. Like I think our vision in a lot of is in most ways is completely aligned with, is at the end of the day, we want to help as many couples and individuals suffer less in their life. And then we want to help people grow together. And a lot of times I think where the differences pop up, and same thing with a family. You want a healthy family, you want a sustainable financial future together, you want your kids to be healthy and well, but it's the execution that how you get there. I think that sometimes couples have a hard time staying unified in.
Yeah, they have different ideas of the path to getting there and what that actually looks like.
Yeah, and then you add another person in there who's trying to help in that way. It's just like it tilts the balance off.
Yeah. Well, you said it perfectly. The word is balance, because one of the best leadership lessons I've learned over the years is your job as a leader is to constantly balance alignment with autonomy. So on one hand, you want to make sure that everybody on your team is aligned with the vision and aligned with where you and your significant other want to go in the business. But on the other hand, you want the people you hire to have autonomy. So really what that looks like is you presenting them with the menu of options and giving them the opportunity to choose from the menu and opportunities for them to contribute to it. So that way that balance between alignment and autonomy is maximized.
I love that. Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, let's do one more and then,
Because it's so important, right? The prioritizing of your relationship and quality time. But we also know when a couple, we have two businesses right now, like it's really hard.
Yeah.
What do you do to support couples in maintaining that intimate connection while owning businesses together or even building their business?
There's a couple different things that have been really, really helpful. Number one is we have to create space for it.
Yeah.
So what we do with all of our entrepreneur couples is we actually have them pull out their calendar and say, okay, here's what we want to do. We want to answer the question, when does work start and when does work stop? And if we can answer that question, great. Let's map out on the calendar the block of when work starts and when work stops. And usually for us driven entrepreneurs, especially if we own multiple businesses, the idea of deciding when work stops has to be a conscious decision. Yes. Otherwise, the work never stops. Let's be honest, right? Yeah. One of our mentors says that business is kind of like a cookie monster. It'll constantly eat and eat and eat until you tell it to stop. So you have to basically take control of your schedule and your life and say, this is when it starts, this is when it stops. Once that is set aside, you can also ask the question, when do we want to actually connect as a romantic partnership? Like, how do we actually come together? Whether it's going on date nights, whether it's just having time for us to connect intimately as a couple, emotionally and physically, where does that live on the calendar? And when do we also have time for our family? Where does that live on the calendar? Yeah. When do we have time for ourselves, our self-care and fueling ourselves up after pouring into others throughout the day? Those four things, if we can map those out on a calendar, that is the first step of actually making time to prioritize some of the most important things of your life, which of course includes your romantic time with your partner. Beyond that though, it goes a little bit deeper. So obviously we could do this, and I'm sure you've heard the age-old advice of going on date nights, and they are powerful. Like we have inside of our client programs, we actually do date night challenges where the couples that go on the most consistent date nights every single week over a 12-week time span, we give away prizes like massage days and spa days and dinners just to keep them remembering that they can make that time for each other throughout the week. Yeah. And then if we go even deeper, now that that space is created, Ariel, what would you recommend?
Yeah. So one of the things that we've seen is that when you are together with your partner and you guys run a business together, it becomes very easy to start to see your partner as just a business partner or a roommate or somebody that you're solving problems with rather than somebody that you actually have that like spark, that chemistry, that attraction to that maybe brought you together in the first place. Yeah. Right. So one of the things that we found is really fostering that attraction with each other is also important in addition to just creating the space. So one of the things that an exercise that we do with our clients a lot of the time is what we now call the attraction conversation. which is identifying what are some of those times in the past that you found your partner super attractive. Like some of those moments, like what were you doing? What were the moments that you found them very attractive? And then the next step is, okay, if you can identify the moments, what were the traits or the characteristics that your partner was displaying during those moments? Maybe it was, the moment was watching your husband playing on the floor with your kids. And maybe the trait that you found really attractive at that moment was their playfulness and like how good they were as a father. And so when you can identify those two things, then it becomes, okay, how can we actually integrate more of those traits into our life? And how can we now create the space to integrate that more often? Because when we get bogged down in the busyness of life and work and business, we oftentimes forget to just incorporate those things that make us who we are and that our partner really found attractive in the very beginning. So how can we integrate more of those things in our life in addition to just the tasks and the responsibilities that we're all carrying?
Yeah.
It's so true. It's like, and especially like the couples we see, they just come in and they're so heavy and like play, joy. What? That does not exist. We have too much going on. It's like you just forget, but going to that like just natural state of, again, openness and space to have that time that we had in the beginning is so important. And I love that you guys do those types of intimacy skills while also helping them cultivate some really good business sense. Like I love that you guys are kind of combining the two because they're both very important. Emotional and physical intimacy for a very successful business.
Well, I mean, I'd love to just have you guys just tell our audience just, how can they connect with you? If they're just like listening to this and like, give me more of, couplepreneurship, what's their pathway?
Yeah, so there's a couple main places. The first is our Instagram. So we have Instagram, it's at couplepreneurs. So it's couple and then preneurs. We have a Facebook group that's also called the Successful Couples in Business. This is a place where we got the opportunity to bring together a community of other entrepreneur couples because it was something that we felt like we were sorely missing in the earlier days.
Yeah, it's a free community. We have over 5,000 other couplepreneurs from all over the world. So if you're looking for a place where you don't feel like you're the odd one out and you want to talk about these things more on a regular basis, that's why we created that Facebook group.
Yeah, and then we have a podcast. It's called The Couplepreneur Show, and you can find that on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify.
That's right.
The Couplepreneur Show. I just love that name too. It's so perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, someone said that to us as a joke once, and then it just became
stuck.
How we roll. Because really, where all this started was Ariel and I were growing businesses together, and we were shooting, stories as we were going on our dates, and we were singing these like date night songs and just having fun while growing businesses together. And people would reach out to us and they would ask us like, how do you guys do this? How do you make this work? So that's really what kicked it all off is we started just coaching other people. And now, years later, after doing this for so many couples, we're blessed to say that we've helped couples grow and do like 50,000, 100,000, 300,000, even $2 million months in their business. Wow. And the things that they say was the most valuable was not even the money, but the actual time that they got to reconnect as a partner in the process.
Yeah. Maintaining their relationship and even fostering deeper connection alongside building that business. Oh, that's awesome. I love what you guys do. I'm so happy we got to meet you today.
Absolutely. We are so glad to be here. Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah. So, obviously we will pop all this stuff into our show notes. So if you're listening to the show, please just like jump on that and check them out. Cause I did before the show and I got some great stuff. There were a couple other things, just like little things like you had dividing tasks days into extrovert days, introvert days, just some really cool stuff. I think you guys are super like creative and relatable. So, thank you so much for being on the show.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.
So thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Ariel. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. You deserve an awesome relationship. Bye-bye.